So this video topic will discuss a very interesting concept of WordPress, and that is how to create CRUD-based REST APIs. CRUD stands for Create, Read, Update, and Delete. It means by the help of this video topic, we'll get the complete idea if someone asks to create REST APIs inside WordPress. So all these things we'll learn inside this complete video topic. So once we create our REST APIs inside WordPress, it means that we can perform easily all these operations like create operation, read operation, update operation, and delete operation. So for this interesting topic, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Now let's get started. So simply, I'll go to one of my WordPress admin panel. And here, first thing first, we have to discuss that what is the plan to start this video topic. So here I'll open this WordPress startup into my VS Code. Let's open a new tab. So simply either we can double click here or Control N. So first thing first, what is the planning of this entire video topic? So as we know that we have to create or learn the concept to create REST APIs inside WordPress. So what basically we can do here, first of all, we'll create a table. Let's say WP underscore students, and this table will be created on plugin activation. It means inside this video topic, we'll create our own custom plugin. And once plugin will be activated, we have to create a custom table called WP underscore students inside our database. And also, if suppose plugin will be deactivated, so on the deactivation, also we have to drop that table like WP students from database. So by following these concepts, first we have to learn the concept of plugin activation and plugin deactivation hook. So if suppose we have created our plugin and on plugin activation, this table now exists inside WordPress database. Now by the help of this table, now we have to create our CRUD-based REST APIs. So as we had discussed that we have to create CRUD-based APIs, which means that the first API will be responsible to create any data, to create any students inside our table. And also we have to create our second API, which basically lists all the students what we have inside our table. In the same way, we have the third API, which is going to update any student data on the basis of student ID. And finally, also we have the API that is for delete operation. Whenever we pass student ID into that API, automatically it finds that students from table and automatically delete that. So overall, inside this video topic, we have to create first a table called students inside our database, and by the help of that student and some data, we have to perform all these operations like create operation, read operation, update operation, and delete operation. So in summary of this description, if I go, let's say that table WP underscore students APIs. So list all students, and this API we call using get request type. Here, let's say create student. This API will use post request type. And here, while creating any student, we want data, for example, name, email, and let's say phone number. Then we have to create one more API that is for update student data. And this API will use put request type, and here while calling this API we have to first pass our student ID into URL and all about the parameters like name, email, phone number into a request body. So here let's cut and put inside this parenthesis, and we have to pass into body into JSON format. And finally, we have to create one more API that is to delete student from table. And while calling this API, we have to use delete request type. So while calling this API, we have to first pass ID into URL, and on the basis of this ID, its student ID, we have to first find that student exists inside our table. If it exists, simply we have to delete that. Now next, let's start the implementation or the development of this entire plugin. So first I will go inside this WP content folder. Then I will go into this plugins folder. Let's create our plugin folder first. So click on this folder icon, and here I will create WP-CRUD-APIs. And inside this plugin folder, let's create our main plugin file, that is wp-crud-apis.php. Simply, let's go inside this file, and first we have to write some simple or the PHP comment lines. So multi-line comment of PHP, and here let's say plugin name wp CRUD APIs. And if I write, let's say, for students, or simply let's go into this description section, and here let's say this is custom plugin for CRUD operation related to students table. Then here we'll have called version number, let's say 1.0, author. For the time being, all these parameters are okay, like plugin name, description, version, and author. So after these basic comment lines, what next? Simply let's go and add a checkpoint here that if not defined, first let's define, and I will use a WordPress constant called WPINC. So if this constant is not defined, basically this is a constant comes from WordPress. If it is not defined, simply we have to exit from there. Otherwise, what next? So first thing first, by the help of this custom plugin of WordPress, we want to create our first table called WP underscore students inside our database. So to create this table, I'll use the concept of register activation hook. So by using the concept of a WordPress function, simply on plugin activation, we can dynamically create a table inside our database. So here, activation hook, and by using we can create students table, and here the function will be register underscore activation underscore hook, and inside this first argument we have to pass our current file path. It means our plugin main file path. So to pass, I'll use the magical constant of PHP, that is double underscore file and double underscore. Next, inside the second argument, we have to pass our callback function, and by the help of that callback function, we basically create our dynamic table structure. So here, let's say WordPress, it means WP underscore or create APIs. Simply, it is a plugin prefix. So WordPress CRUD APIs underscore, let's say create students table. So once we pass the callback function, let's copy this function name, and here let's say function name, and inside this function name actually we have to write a MySQL query, and once we type that query, so that query basically creates a table inside our database. So what basically we can do here, let's go to browser, and I will open my phpMyAdmin. So I will go here into this current WordPress setup database. So first I'll create a manual table. So here let's say WP underscore students. Once we pass the table name, so simply the number of columns we want something for here. Let's click on create button. Table created, not table created. Actually, we have to first pass our table column names. So ID, let's say name here. Then we want the next column as email, phone number. Let's choose our data type. So ID is integer, which is okay. Name should be varchar, and let's say 120 characters. Email is also varchar. Let's say 80 characters. Phone number also will be varchar, and let's say 30 characters. Let's go inside this null checkbox. So it is required. Name is also required. Email is also required, and phone number is optional. So in that case, I will go and click on this check of this null checkbox. So first ID column will be our primary key, so auto increment, and also inside this index dropdown, primary will be selected. So once we pass all these attributes to this table, let's click on the save button. Now you can see that this time now table created. So what next? Let's copy the table name. Next, after copy, let's go into the SQL tab. Click here, go inside it, remove this default command, and here let's say show create table, and then we have to pass the table name. So once we use this command, so simply it will give us a MySQL create statement for this database table. So simply either we can click on this go button or here control enter. Now we can see that here we have some type of command that is create table. So let's click on this extra options, full text, click on go button, and now we are able to see our complete create statement command to create this table. So what next? Simply let's copy this command up to this char set. Let's go inside our editor, and here let's say SQL query equals to double quotes, enter, go inside it and put it this complete create statement command. So we can see that now inside this table, here we have the columns as ID, name, email, phone number, and ID what we used is our primary key. And here, let's remove also this char set. So successfully we can see that here we have our MySQL query. So what next? I'll go into our database table because we want to create this table into dynamic way. Let's go inside our database, and first I will go and let's drop this table. Click on drop. Now that table does not exist now. So what we can do, let's go to editor, and here I'll use global WPDB object, and here let's say table name equals to WPDB, and I will use a call prefix property. So basically it will return WP underscore. So as you can see here, the table name we have called WP underscore students. So here, this is the dynamic like the way to get our table prefix. So simply I will copy, let's say table prefix, and also here, let's say table name equals to table prefix, and I will concatenate with this students. Now finally, let's copy, go here, I'll remove and simply I'll concatenate with this table name. So once we do all these basic things, now here we have to call a helper function of WordPress, and that is db delta. So db delta helper function exists inside upgrade.php. So if I search for a file called upgrade.php, now we can see that this file is containing a function called db delta, and this file is coming from wp-admin and includes folder. So first thing first, before calling this function to execute this create statement, we have to include this .php file inside this function. So what we can do here, let's say include once. ABS path is a WordPress constant. It will give up to a root folder structure. Then we have to go inside WP admin, and then we have to go inside this includes folder. And from this includes folder, then we have to include upgrade.php. So once we include this file, so simply now we are able to call this db delta function, and let's pass our SQL query. So successfully, once plugin will be activated, so on plugin activation, this callback function will be called, and this callback function is going to create this dynamic table structure into our database. Save all these changes. Let's go to browser. So now we can see that that table does not exist. If I go here, let's go to plugins. And inside this plugins list, here we have our WP CRUD APIs. Let's click on this activate button, and successfully plugin activated. If I go and let's reload here, and here I can see that table didn't create. So it means we have some mistake. Let's go to editor inside the SQL query. So okay, actually, if we use this default, so also we have to add call charset. But as we know that we have removed our charset keyword, so also we have to remove this default. And let's remove this engine equals to InnoDB. Now for the time being, this is only the create statement. So save these changes. Let's go to browser one more time. Let's go here, click on deactivate. And again, if I click on this activate button or link, let's go and reload. And now we can see that successfully, this time we have created our WP underscore students table inside our database. One more thing, also we have to attach our deactivation hook so that once plugin will be deactivated, that table also should be deleted. So here, let's use deactivation hook, and here I'll use register deactivation hook. And here, let's first pass our file here, that is main plugin file path, and here next our like the plugin prefix or the callback function. So WordPress CRUD APIs underscore, let's say drop underscore students table, and simply let's copy this function name or the callback function, and here let's say global WordPress object, and here let's say table name equals to WPDB prefix property, and then we have to concatenate called students, and here it's a WPDB. Then I will use SQL method of not SQL, it's query method of WordPress, and here let's say drop table, then table name. But before that, first we have to check that if table exists, then we have to delete that. So drop table if it exists, or simply if exists, then we have to go and concatenate this table name. So curly pairs and table name. I will save all these changes. Let's go to browser. So as we can see that inside this database, our table exists called students. If I go into plugins list, click on deactivate. So hopefully our deactivation hook will be called. And if I go and reload, now we can see that our table removed from this database. Let's do one more experiment here. Click on activate. If I go and reload, table exists. And if I go click on deactivate, and we can see that table now removed. So successfully, now we have completed our first stage, first concept of this plugin development, that is how to use our activation and deactivation hook with the WordPress dynamic database table. Now next we have to discuss our most important concept of this plugin development, that is how to create our CRUD-based APIs inside application. So all right, friends. Now to create our CRUD-based APIs for this WordPress application, actually first we want a namespace. What basically it is, let's go to browser. I'll go into our WordPress setup. Let's open this application like visit site. So after that, let's type wp-json, and here it means our project URL /wp-json. Hit enter. And now we can see that here we have a JSON object, and inside this object here we have multiple properties. One of the most important property here, that is called namespaces. It means namespace just like a container where we can store our APIs. For example, if we want to create our CRUD-based APIs for students operation, so first we want a container. It means first we want a namespace to create APIs inside WordPress. So by default, WordPress provides all these namespaces. So either we can use these default namespaces, or it's better to create our custom namespace for custom APIs. So what to do? Let's go here, and after that, let's say APIs. So I will use an action hook called add action, and it will be rest underscore API underscore init. And here I'll use the concept of callback function. So function, then I will go inside this function, and here let's say register underscore rest underscore route. It's a WordPress function. By the help of that, we can easily register our custom API route inside WordPress. So here, look at here, the first argument, we have to first pass our API namespace. So here, let's call it as students /v1. Next, after this route's namespace, then we have to pass our route name. So I will simply call a student because first we want to create our API to get all students. So here student, and a third argument we have to pass our most important parameters. So this API we will call using get request type. So methods equals to get, and here let's say callback, it's a WP underscore student underscore list, or let's say WP underscore handle student list. Let's copy this callback function because it's a function. So whenever we call this API will hit using get request type to this method. So simply let's say function name, and here let's say global WPDB, and for the time being, let's say return rest ensure response. And here, let's pass an array status equals to true. Let's say message equals to list student API. And here, let's say data equals to blank array. Or for the time being, let's say some sample names here. So we can see that we have created our first API, and whenever we call this API will call this function, and this function simply is going to return a JSON response with all these data. So how to test? So first thing first, I'll go and check our namespace is registered inside WordPress. Let's go to browser, and if I reload, and now we can see that okay, actually first we have to go and activate our plugin. So click on activate, plugin activated. Let's go and reload. And now we can see that inside this namespaces array, inside this JSON object, here we have one more namespace, that is students forward slash v1. So if I copy this namespace, let's duplicate this tab. And if I type after this wp-json students forward slash v1, let's hit enter. And now we can see that namespace equals to students v1, what we have created. And inside this routes object, we can see here we have students forward slash v1. And here we have our first route, that is students forward slash v1 forward slash student. And this is the route what we have created, we can see here. So if I go back to browser again and if I open, so we can see that this API we can use using get request type. So how to test this API? Simply to test this application, I have installed a VS Code plugin called Thunder Client. Let's click on new request, and here this is same exact as the Postman. If I copy this complete URL, let's go here. So this is our WordPress setup URL. Then after that, wp-json. Then here our plugin, like our custom namespace, that is students forward slash v1. And then we have to type our URL. So the first URL we have called is student. So let's copy and put it here. So this route we have to call using get request type. So get will be selected. Click on send button. And now you can see that status equals to true, message equals to list student API, and this is all about the data. So for the time being, we have bind only the static data. If we want all the data from table, what we can do simply, let's say data equals to, or even let's say students equals to wp-db get underscore results. And here, let's say select all from table name. So here, let's say table name equals to wp-db prefix property concatenate with the table name called students. And if I copy the table name, let's go here, curly pairs and the table name. We want data in associative array. So the second index of this get results method will be array underscore a. So simply, if I copy, let's remove this static array and simply put it here. Save these changes. Let's go hit again on send button. We can see no data. But if I go back to browser, go inside our table, let's click on this. Okay, let's reload first. Developer students, click on insert here. Let's create a dummy student, dummy phone number. Click on go button. So successfully, first student now created. If I go, click on send button, and now we can see that into this list, here we have first data object. Let's create our second API. So successfully we have created our first API to get all the data, to get all the students from table. Now in the same way, let's say create student API, and it will use post request type. So while creating any student, we want data for name value, for email, and for phone number. So what to do? I'll go here. Let's use register REST route. So register REST route, and here we have to first pass that what the API we are creating. This API must be stored inside this namespace called student forward slash v1, and the route will be called student. And here let's pass an array, and inside this array, first thing first, this API will support using post request type. Callback will be, let's say, WP underscore handle underscore, let's say, create student. And also, while hitting this API, we want data for these parameters, like we want value for name, email, and phone number. Now let's go and set some attributes. So as we know that the name field is required, so first type equals to a string, and here required equals to true. It means this parameter will be required. In the same way, for email field, let's say type equals to a string, and here required equals to true. In the same way, for phone number, so only let's say type equals to a string, and as we know that type equals to a string and required equals to false. So successfully here we have the complete skeleton to create one more REST API route inside WordPress application. So if I save these changes, let's go to browser, and here if I reload to our custom namespace, now let's do some zoom here. So this is our first object, second object. So we can see that as we have the common, what basically the common is, we can see inside this get API, here we have a student, and the same route we are using student here, but this time we are using a different request method type, and that is post request type. So this is a common route, but the difference is that only we have the different methods type. So here we can see inside this second object, here we have the same route, but this time the methods we have called using get request type and post request type. So inside this endpoints, here we have the first object we can see like using get request type, but once we close and go inside the second object, which is basically for this post request type, so we can see method equals to post request type, and arguments while calling that API we have to pass as the name value, email value, and phone number. And also we can see required equals to true, and why it is true because okay, here we have to pass false value. Save these changes. Let's go and reload. So here if I go to the routes object into our second route using post request type, now we can see that we have to pass our name, email, and phone number, which is an optional field. Now let's discuss the concept that how to create our callback function so that we can receive all those values, and simply after getting values how to create a student into our table. So I will copy this callback function, then I will go here. This is to list data, and here let's say create data. So function name. So as we know that this callback function will be hit using post request type. So here we have to pass or additional parameter into this parenthesis called request, and by the help of this request variable, which is our request, we have to get all those parameters what basically we pass while calling this API method. So here if I go and check, let's say print r, let's say request, and if I use get underscore params, save these changes, let's go into our new request. If I choose post request type while calling this API, go inside body, inside form data, either we can choose form data or JSON format data. So I will choose JSON format data, and here let's say name. This is our second student name, phone number. So as we can see that we are passing some data into JSON format inside body to this API URL using post request type. And while calling this API method, we are hitting this callback function. And inside this callback function, simply we are printing all those variables, all those values, what basically we are passing into a request. So if I go click on send button, Now you can see that here we are getting an array, and inside this array here we have key value pairs, that is name, email, phone number. This is our properties and all these values. So simply what we can do, and one more thing, if suppose we are not passing any value, click on send button. So here automatically WordPress checks that if these parameters are required, what basically we have inside our argument section, automatically here we have like 400 bad request, like parameters missing here, that is name and email are required fields while calling this API. So it's better, let's pass our values, click on send button. So here we have our values, go inside our API callback function. So what basically we can do, let's say name equals to request here. So I'll use get param. Remember, we have used get params to list all values, but if we want to get a single specific value, simply we are using get underscore param. So here I want to get first the name value, email value, let's say request here, get param, it will be email, and for phone number, request here, let's say get underscore param, and it will be phone underscore number. And finally, after getting all these values, what we can do, first I will go and import our global database object. So WPDB, let's say table name, WPDB, prefix property, concatenate with the students, and here, then I will copy. So WPDB, let's use insert method. Then we have to pass the table name as first argument array, the key value pairs. So first we have to pass the table column names as name, email, phone number, and the values we have inside this name, email, and phone number. And one more thing, before saving all these values, what we are getting from request body. So before saving by using this insert method, also we have the option of sanitization. What basically I mean to say, let's say that this is the value what I'm trying to save inside our table. So before save, also we have the WordPress functions to sanitize that. So let's say that here we have the name value, email value, phone number. So after insertion here, let's say return test underscore ensure response. Let's pass an array status equals to true, and here let's say message student saved successfully. Save these changes. So if I go into our request section, I am passing all these values, click on send button, and now you can see that student saved successfully. So the same API, if I hit using get request type, click on send button, and now you can see that inside this data, here we have the first object, which is our dummy data, and second object, which is created by using the second API called create student API. So finally, we have completed two APIs concept, that is first was our to get all the data, and second to create a data into a table. Now let's create our third API, that is if we want to update any existing information, how to update that. So simply I will go into our callback function of this REST API init, and here let's say update student API. So as we know that if we want to update any data, we have to first call using put request type. Either we can pass all the informations like name, email, and phone number. And additionally, also we have to pass student ID, that is ID, into URL, so that after getting a student ID from URL, first we have to check that if student exists. If it exists, then simply we have to update our existing informations. So here, let's say register underscore rest underscore route. Our namespace will be students v1, and here let's pass student the same API route, but the difference is that this time we have to call using put request type. And here let's say callback, let's say wp underscore handle underscore update student. Also, if you're talking about the arguments, so we can pass the set of values as name, email, and phone number. Save these changes, and here we have semicolon missing. So what next? I'll then copy this callback function name. Let's go here. This is for update student. So function name, we have to pass our request variable. So if we want to get all the values as we know, like request here, and simply we can call get params. And also, if we want to get the ID value from URL, the same method we can use, call getParam and ID. But here, friends, one more thing before getting this ID value from URL, also we have to change our routes definition or the routes declaration. Let's go here. So as we can see that as per the current scenario, we don't have the option to pass student ID into URL. So how to pass that? So simply student forward slash, then parenthesis, question mark, capital P, angular opening bracket, angular closing bracket, inside this ID, then backward slash and T plus. This is basically a regular expression, which means that I am passing student ID after this student route. Save these changes. So this is the ID, what basically we have to get by using this get param. So once we pass here, what to do? So ID, let's say student ID equals to request here, get param, it will be ID. And first we have to check that if this student exists into our table. So how to check? Let's say student data equals to WPDB. First we have to import this global database object. So global WPDB, and here let's say table name equals to WPDB prefix here. So students, let's copy this table name variable, and here WPDB underscore get row. It means I want to get only a single specific data. So here select all from table name where ID equals to student ID. So put into curly pairs student ID, and also this is required. So here let's put one more condition, that is if not empty, then we have to go inside this if block and execute all the logical implementations. Otherwise, if it is empty, then we have to go inside this else block. Let's return rest underscore ensure response. And here status equals to, let's say, false. Message equals to, let's say, student ID must be required in URL. Save these changes. So if student data exists, let's copy. Then I will go here. If not empty, then I will go inside this if block. It means student exists. Otherwise, let's copy. Go inside this else block. Status equals to false. And here, let's say failed to get student data. So let's say that if student exists, what to do? So WPDB, I will call update method, and here first we have to pass the table name, second our updated informations, and inside this third argument, which is our second array, the condition called ID equals to student ID. And here, if suppose if we have passed our updated name value inside a request body, so name here, let's say request, it will be get param, and if it contains our updated name value, so simply this new name value will update to this existing value. But if suppose we are not passing any updated name, so in that case we want to update the same field with the existing data, so student data, and here let's say name here. So let's go inside the second argument, and I have to use array underscore a, which returns our data set into associative array. So this line of code simply means that if name value exists inside our updated data, so that value will go inside this name field. Otherwise, our old value will go inside this name key. So in the same way, email, let's copy, put here. So email and email. And finally, for the phone number, let's say phone underscore number, let's copy and put it here. So once we do, let's go, let's say return rest underscore ensure response. And here, let's say status equals to true, message equals to data updated, and put a semicolon. Save these changes. I'll go here into this new request, or if I go first into browser, let's go and reload this namespace. So if I close this first one inside this second one, now we have the third object we can see, and this is students v1. This is our namespace. Then here we have the route name, and here we have a regular expression. By the help of that, we can pass student ID. So if I open, now you can see that it supports put request type. And while calling this API, these parameters like name, email, and phone number is required, or it is optional parameters. So what to do? Simply I will go here. Let's go into this new request. Let's choose put request type, the same route. And if suppose I am passing, let's say 100, this ID does not exist as we know. Click on send button and we can see that failed to get student data. Now let's pass some updated data. So Vijay Kumar, the name value I want to update, but I don't want to update the email value and the phone number. Let's go to our DB table first. Click on reload. So we can see that this is our second student data and I want to update the second student information. So here, let's pass to here. This is the name value. Click on send button. And okay, actually, we are getting failed to get student data. And why we are getting? Let's go to editor, go here, and student ID. So first thing first, let's go and echo that value. Let's first check that we can get actually we are getting this student ID or not. Click on send button. So we can see that we are able to get the student ID. So it is coming. So get row, select all from OK. Here we have the spelling mistake inside this from keyword. So from here, save these changes, click on send button, and now we can see data updated. So once we do that, if I go and reload, and now we can see only the name value updated, and also we have the existing values. So this is the use of this conditional operator. If this value exists, then it will be updated. Otherwise, we are saving our old values. So successful. Now, this is the concept of update API inside our API development. So here we have completed first our read operation. Then this one is our create operation. It means create operation, read operation, and this is all about our update operation. Now finally, we have to discuss our delete operation. So let's say delete student API, and we have to call using delete request type, and I will pass ID into URL and it will be our delete operation. So here register underscore rest underscore route, and here let's pass our namespace. So students v1 student, then we have to pass our student ID. So parenthesis question mark capital P angular bracket ID backward slash D plus, and here inside this array, let's say methods equals to delete request type and callback here wp underscore handle student delete. So simply let's copy this callback function. Then I will go here. Let's say delete student. So function name request here. So student ID equals to request, and it will be get underscore param and here ID. So what next? Simply first we have to go and use our global database object. Also you can see that I'm using again and again global WPDB. So also you have the option to create a separate variable, separate function, which function is going to return these values. So here, let's say WPDB, let's say get row, and here select all from table name. So curly pairs, table name, let's say associative array. So here it will be student data. So if student exists, how to check? I'll use if not empty, it means we have the student data. So in that case, simply WPDB, I'll call delete method here, table name inside the second argument, which is condition. So put an array, and inside this array, ID equals to student ID. So here, let's say return rest underscore ensure response, and here status equals to true, message equals to data deleted with a semicolon. If I go inside this else block, it means student does not exist. So what we can do, I will go and copy this else block response and simply putting it here. Save these changes. So if I go into this request tab, let's go and select delete request type. So if we want to delete, for example, this one number student, or before that, let's pass 200, which does not exist. Click on send button. Okay, actually, we have to add one more checkpoint, and that is where ID equals to, and this is student ID. Save these changes. Let's go click on send button, and we can see that failed to get student data. So if we go and pass student2, which is existing, click on send button, data deleted. So if I go and reload, and now we can see that successfully we are able to delete that student from table. So if I go into this JSON format of this namespace, go and reload. So here inside this routes object, this is first one, second one, third one, and inside this third one, where we are passing a student ID. So we can see that this route we can call using put request type and delete request type. So finally, friends, now we have completed this entire interesting journey to create CRUD-based APIs inside WordPress. So for example, if anyone asks from you that if we want to create, for example, an employee management system, so you have to provide the APIs from WordPress. So simply, it's very basic now, or it's very simple. What you have to do, first you have to create a table called employees. After creating, simply you have to use an action hook called REST API init. After using action hook, then you have to call some functions of WordPress, for example, register REST route. So by using that function, simply you have to provide some endpoints like for get operation, like list all employees, create operation, like to create an employee, update operation, update an employee, and finally delete operation. So overall, this video will give us the complete idea, complete concept to create CRUD-based APIs inside WordPress. So for this interesting topic, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Let's meet into our next amazing video. So for this video session, guys, thank you for watching and have a great day.